Guys for joining. Yes, Carlos, I consent to you recording the meeting. Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you.
Did your daughter have a rolling pin?
You know how they do, Mr. Ricks. You know how they do. Get too old to be chased around the apartment. No, thank you guys for joining. Happy Monday. It's nice to see all of you. Sorry, I did not see you guys last month. I was stuck in an airport in Charlotte, so thank you for understanding. But let's dive in. I know we're scheduled for an hour and a half. I promise you this will not take an hour and a half. I promise you this will not take an hour and a half. Might take an hour and 25 minutes, but we'll probably be done quicker. Okay, I want to go around the room, take a temperature check of everybody. Jen, I will start with you. Your posts have given me life over the last couple of weeks, and your beautiful baby boy. So thank you. How are you doing?
Well, I've been at the beach since Thursday. I'm sort of playing and sort of working, although working way too much today because of the weather. I'll be back tomorrow, but no, everything is everything is great, and yeah, I had no complaints at all.
You're by the water, so how could you complain, right?
See, there it is. Well, it's dark and yucky, but there it is.
There we go. There we go. Awesome. Robin, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing okay. Yeah, sort of recovering from our trip. We're good. Yeah, nothing to complain about, really. It's very odd.
It is strange, right? It's an odd feeling to not have much to complain about.
I mean, I'm
right?
sure I could find something if I tried, but I don't think I'll bother.
Sounds good. Shabab, how are you?
Doing well. Excited about celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day today, and excited about the announcement of the Nobel Prize winners in economics.
Yeah.
Pleased to see some folks getting recognition for evidence-based work.
That's right. That's right. Mr. Ricks, how are you?
Above ground, looking down.
That's it. That's all we can ask for, right, at this point. Eric, how are you?
Dalvin, I'm well, thanks. Saturday, my daughter completed the Baltimore Marathon, and we had a party for her at her building, and the weather held up. It was an outdoor event without rain, I'm happy to say, and a lot of her friends and admirers came to cheer her on, even though she was wasted from exhaustion.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's impressive. Shout out to her. Alicia, how are you?
Hi, Dalvin. I'm okay. I'm here.
Yeah. Sergeant Brewer, how are you?
I'm doing well, everybody. Thank you. The only thing I have to complain about is that even though it's raining, I'm not by the beach, like by the water like Jen is. So I'm a little jealous, but other than that, I'm good. Thank you.
That's a very real complaint. It's a very real complaint. Let's see. So Nadia is joining us, but she is off camera because she is on bed rest until Wednesday. She is okay, but she is on bed rest. The doctors have told her to take it easy. And as you guys know, nobody can ever really tell us to take it easy because we tend to not listen, right? Carlos, how are you?
Doing well. Just before this meeting, I planted 2 trees, so I'm very excited about that.
Nice. There we go. Hope eternal, right? That's how it goes. Okay. There's some of us are not. Some folks are not here today because it is a holiday, and I think honestly that's probably a really good place to start before we dive in. And some folks will be joining us late. So you guys saw in Carlos's email before I get started, anybody who is here who's not a commissioner, please put your name and all your information in the chat box, like Carlos, I'm sure told you to already do, so that way we know who is present. So we wanted to start this meeting by reiterating the attendance policy for commissioners, right? Now, I understand that we have moved to 2 meetings a month, in part because we want to move this work along, right? We want to move some of the work that we've been doing along. The second meeting is relatively short, right? It gives us a chance to kind of come together before the end of the month to just kind of close some loops. And I think we've done a pretty good job of ending those pretty quickly. We didn't even have one last month, actually, because it fell on the day that Nadia and I were speaking at the forum, right? It is absolutely critical for folks to make sure that they attend the meetings because we we were kind of lax about it the first year, but the county's now looking at us because, and Carlos, remind me what the attendance policy is.
So if any member of a board, commission, or committee misses 3 meetings in a row, they're automatically removed. And the county executive in the council, I guess, could, I'm not sure. I know this is a council appointed commission, so I'm not sure if the county executive would still have a say, but they could like waive that removal for cause. But it's like an automatic removal if you miss
Yeah.
3 in a row. And then if you miss 5, because this commission meets, I guess, 24 times in a year, then that would also get you removed from the commission.
Yeah. And so and to Shabab's point, because she just raised a really good point in the chat. We also, if we fall under, what is it, 7 members, Shabab, right? We fall under 7, we can't have a quorum, which means we can't move anything forward. So I understand that summers are tough, right? We all are trying to find ways to kind of keep our heads above water, right? And I get all that. But let's make sure that we've developed a pretty good working relationship with each other. Replacing one of us and putting in somebody who has to get used to us and all that stuff would, I mean, and it'll set us back. And I'll be honest, it wouldn't be removing one person, it would be removing several people. And so I think it's important to note that, like, it's not just a one person thing. Like, this has been an issue. And so we need to make sure that if you're going to miss, just shoot Nadia and I an email and make sure that Carlos knows. And we've been pretty good about communicating with Carlos. But if we were adhering to the rule, a bunch of us would have been removed already. Okay. So we didn't adhere to it the first year. They gave us some flexibility. Let's make sure that we adhere to it going forward. Okay. Especially because we are moving some stuff along, right? Like in November, Nadia and I are meeting with the Public Safety Committee from the County Council. Jen has done a lot of really amazing work with the mental health stuff. And Jen, I'm going to use you as an example because I think you've done a lot of work with our external partners. So I'm going to use you as an example here. Say Jen blew off 3 meetings in a row and then, we replaced her, right? Who would pick up the work that she was doing, right? Like, who would pick that work up? Alicia and, right, as Mr. Ricks is saying, not him, right? If Alicia decided to blow off 3 meetings, right? And Alicia has also done a lot, not just with like community-based partners, but just like in terms of helping her subcommittee move the work forward. Then what happens, right? And so we all depend on each other realistically, right? And we all, like, because you guys do such good work, it then makes it easier for Nadia and I to attend these forums and talk about the great work that you do. And it would just be much harder for us to find somebody that does a lot of the great work that you guys do. Okay. Do you guys have any questions about that? Understand that if you have any questions about the attendance policy, I will direct them to Carlos because Carlos is the one that told me about the attendance policy. Do you guys have any questions about that? No? Hearing none? Okay. All right. Let's go straight to subcommittee updates. I will speak for our subcommittee because my partner in crime is not here. So I will also share, and Jasmine gave me permission to share this. Jasmine's grandfather passed away last month. The first weekend in September. And so that's why she hasn't been present. And she's weighing whether she will continue as a commissioner, just because her family's having a really, really hard time. Obviously, we all know this, right? The grief process is tricky. It's not linear, right? And so it's been hard for her. It has been hard for her. So if you can spare a couple moments to just shoot her a message, just to let her know that you're thinking about her, that would be great. But so I've met with the Student Wellbeing Action Group, which is part of the County Council's work on a lot of the school safety work. And I've met with them now twice. I was supposed to meet with them on the 5th of October, but something happened. So I didn't get a chance to meet with them on the 5th, but I've met with them twice. And I will say that they've done a lot of really, really good work. I'm not picking on you, Jen, I promise, but they have met with a lot of the same people that Jen has met with in terms of just like the mental health response stuff, because a lot of their suggestions are rooted in that. Like, how do we use mental health resources to respond to a lot of the stuff that they got going on in their schools, right? And so they are a group of students that I think honestly are some of the brightest students that I've ever sat and had the chance to speak to. They've met with everybody, which is, I think, a testament to their willingness to actually listen to folks, right? And so they want to meet, and they had asked if Sergeant Brewer and I would meet with them And then Sergeant Brewer and I were originally scheduled to meet with them in September, but then they canceled that meeting. And then they happened to meet with my former executive director and pulled me in. So the next step is Sergeant Brewer and I meeting with them. So that way Sergeant Brewer can hear like some of their recommendations, because like I've talked you up, Ms. Sergeant Brewer, and they want to talk to you. Because I think the one thing that they have not run into a wall with, but just they haven't gotten as much face time with MCPD as they would like. And so I said that I can try to facilitate that. So I promise Sergeant Brewer that before this month is up, you and I will meet with them. Okay, so we will do that. But other than that, that's the only update that our subcommittee has. Alicia, can I pass it to you? Is that okay? Can I pass it to you and your subcommittee? Is that good? Yep. Okay, I will pass it to you.
Hi, hiring and discipline subcommittee, we tend to be pretty good about meeting. This just has been a bit of a busy month, and so we had 2 members who missed our last meeting. But one of those 2 members did join in nearing the end of our meeting. And we discussed the recommendations by the Equal Law Enforcement for All, the recommendations that were made. And if everyone recalls, we were tasked with, each subcommittee was tasked with pulling together their reactions, their comments to the recommendations submitted by Equal Law Enforcement for All. And so that's what we've been doing. We've been working hard on that. Caroline has been awesome and assisting me with that. And Nadia and Eric have also been giving their input. But we still have not formally drafted our response to that. I met with Dwayne Crawford, which was awesome. He is the CEO of Noble, and it was fantastic to speak with him. He gave me some very interesting and informative material to work with. And so I'm going to be sharing that with our subcommittee members at our next subcommittee meeting. And we will, again, look at other speakers we can have come to speak with us, because we are the hiring and discipline subcommittee. So that's going to be our focus. What can we do to help with policy and recommendations regarding MCPD practices? So Eric, do you have anything you wanted to add? Oh no, first Caroline. Caroline, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Has she joined yet? Because I know she sent us an
Yeah,
email.
she's
saying she
here.
was-
She's on the
okay.
screen.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I didn't
sorry,
see
I've
it.
been-
Sorry, Caroline. Sorry.
The traffic was really bad, so we're still maneuvering. So I apologize for being off camera. No, I think Alicia, that was perfect. I think by and large, the recommendations were certainly things that were very strong, and I think we're just figuring out, to what extent we want to have any kind of qualifications. But I think we were very overall positive about what was recommended.
Eric, did you have something?
No, I don't have anything to add. Thank you, Alicia.
And to Alicia's point, so our next meeting is going to be us reviewing the recommendations from the subcommittees regarding the audit that was done. So you guys remember Carlos put that in his email in September, the first email, just reminding folks that the 25th is when we'll sit down and review the recommendations. So that way, Nadia and I, when we meet with the county council subcommittee, the public safety committee for the county council, will present our recommendations to them in November. Okay. And Carlos, remind me again, that's November 8th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's November 8th. And just as a reminder, the next PAC meeting, the 25th, OLO will be presenting to the PAC on the traffic stop report.
Yep. And if you guys remember, we had invited them last month, but because they hadn't presented to the county council yet, they couldn't come to present to us. So now they have, or they would by that time, and then they're going to come and present to us. Sounds good? Yeah. Jen.
I just wanted to
Oh,
add
sorry,
as
go ahead,
well.
Alicia.
Sorry, Dalvin, that we received very, very important information from the OLO long ago regarding traffic stops. So if anybody has a chance to go back and look at that'd be a good idea.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point. And that report was really, really detailed. I will say they had a lot of really good information. And honestly, I'm excited for them to come, because I think it'll conceptualize a lot of the points that they made in their report. Jen, I'm going to pass it to you and your subcommittee.
Thank you. I guess for the shout out too, anyway. Yeah, I mean, our committee is kind of weird, kind of disjointed. We've been struggling to find a meeting when all of us are able to attend. Although I just keep plugging away. and to what you had said before, Dalvin, yeah, we did pull together a pretty big group of collaborative partners, which is all the decision makers in this little pot with us. And that meeting, we meet quarterly, and the next meeting is this month. It's October 28th at 7 p.m. We have two people that are going to be presenting. I think you all know Lori Reyes. Officer Reyes is going to be presenting because a lot of her fines and safety, things that she comes into contact with people with disabilities are not even reported to the police as problems yet. A lot of times people don't know what these individuals are missing. So she's got her whole little department working independently of how the call center receives calls. And I think that's an important piece that we need to talk about if we're talking about consolidating and tiering and prioritizing the calls that come in. So she is presenting, and I also have Dawn Ludke from the Montgomery, Maryland Center for School Safety. She is going to be presenting about involuntary hospitalization of adults. That's a huge bill coming up. It's in front of the state legislature. Lots of big emotions on both sides of it, and I think our committee needs to know about it. It would be great if the subcommittee members could attend the meeting to kind of learn, the ins and outs of this. That's really, really complex when there's adults involved that don't realize they need help, but the people in their lives do realize they need help. You cannot just say go to the hospital or take them anywhere. So that's a really big deal. That meeting is coming on the 28th. In the meantime, buried in one of the, I think it's the use of force bill, was a request for the police department to have a group of people in the disability community to meet with repeatedly every few months and really get feedback. And I was asked to help with that, just the nature of my job. I've got hundreds of families, and I was able to put together a really, really great diverse group. We have families of all cultures and backgrounds, all disabilities, all ages, all religious, everything. It's really diverse, and it's a nice group. And that information has been forwarded to the chief, and he will start those meetings whenever he does. It's out of my hands. I did my little part to help, and we have a lot of really strong disability advocate voices on that group, along with their parents, who also see frustration in many different parts of the disability community. So and law enforcement. I think that's it, but I would love to see you guys at the meeting on Thursday night. It's there's going to be a lot of good info at that meeting. So that's
just to clarify, Jen, and that's
Can you
this
post
Thursday,
that?
the 14th, or the 28th.
Nope, it's the 28th.
Okay.
I can send, there's a Teams invite that goes out for that meeting. I have someone does it for Teams, I'm not smart enough for Teams. so someone on the group.
It's hard.
Teams is a disaster in my brain. So I have the link. I will try to forward that to whoever wants to attend, because it's going to be a good discussion. So
That would be, if Jen, if you don't mind, just send it to Carlos, and then Carlos, if you can put it in the Friday update so we all have it, I think that would be good. Jen, I will attend that one.
Great.
Yes, I will attend that one.
Okay.
Dalvin.
Yes, Mr. Rick, sorry.
Like to say that I think that the outreach groups that Jen is connected with really gives a good insight if we're on those calls. You said that we didn't have a meeting last month, the second
one. Yeah.
Second one. But if you will, I want you to know that Jen was on, Alicia was on, and I was on. I know it may have been others, but I know that we were on, and to me that was a meeting.
That's true.
So we should get credit for that.
That's true. That is true.
You get your
And you know what,
M&Ms,
Mr. Riggs,
Brandon.
I'm willing to count that as a meeting. I'm willing to count that as a meeting. That is true. That is true. And I will say, I think 2 points to just what everybody shared so much about so far about their subcommittees. I know I've been really fortunate to hear and about just like, and I hope this conceptualizes the work that you guys have done so far, right? Like, folks have said your name specifically whenever I've been in spaces, right? Like, oh, and Jen, I swear I'm not picking on you. Oh, Jen was at this meeting with Dr. Santiago and she said this, right? And it was something that resonated with somebody, right? Or folks that have been in spaces with you guys, like other community spaces where they're like, oh, I didn't feel ostracized, or I didn't feel targeted, I didn't feel like I couldn't speak or whatever, right? And I think that that's something, even when folks join us at these meetings, they share that. They say that they love the fact that we are as responsive as we are, right? Because I think that's a big part of this, right? Like if somebody joins us on a Monday and pops in and asks a question, we all answer them, right? Like whether it's some follow-up or whether it's just, whatever the case may be. And I think that's something we should feel good about, that, because I will tell you that is not the truth for every commission in this county. That's not the case, right? But it is the case for ours, right? And maybe it's because we're new and we haven't been burnt out yet, but I think it's something good for us to hang
That's
our
a
hat
good
on.
point, Delvin. That's a really good point, because this is the group that has actually allowed me to have a voice for the disability community in these things. There's like 4 or 5 different work groups I attend. And what you said, Dr. Santiago, I meet with him often. And, so yeah, all of these groups, were because, oh, you're on the police thing. Oh, you're
Right.
emergency response. Oh, so all of a sudden I had some element of credibility that I didn't have before. But, but I like, because I'm able to pull all the people together now, we're able to pull all the players together and really have collaborative and hard conversations, which how to prioritize lives of people, right?
Yeah.
So,
And that's what it's going to take, right? And that's what it's going to take as we and, I said this when Nalia and I were appointed chair and vice chair, right? And Sharab and I said it, during the first year, it's going to take us being in these rooms, willing to have those difficult conversations, right? And being able to come out of them with some tangible steps, right? Being able to say like, okay, we're going to take, like for example, I'll use the audit as an example, right? It was this all-encompassing, incredibly dense document, right? And we're going to take that apart and we're going to make some recommendations. And the hope is that the county council takes us seriously enough, because they appointed all 13 of us, right? That we're like, hey, look, like we sat down and we had those difficult conversations. This is what we came to, right? This is the agreement that we came to. So fingers crossed. But honestly, I continue to be impressed by the work that you guys are doing. I know it may not feel like that sometimes. Well, not for me, because I talk you guys up all the time, but it feels good to continue working with you guys. I'm missing one subcommittee, and I think that's yours, Robin, right? Am I correct?
unmute, Robin.
Yeah, okay, so we have been pushing forward on the policing, on the traffic enforcement front. We sent another information request to MCPD. I'm hoping that we will get something back from them fairly shortly. I think it's due soon. We're going to hear from OLO at the next meeting. We have put out the public comment form, and I really hope everybody has activated their networks to send out individual messages to your networks to try and get people to respond. I think that's going to be very helpful to us. I am hoping that we will have a sort of an opportunity at the beginning of November to meet specifically with the MCPD executive team who are in charge of traffic enforcement. And I would hope that would include both the traffic division and at least one person, one senior person from one of the 6 stations, because after all, they are currently doing most of the traffic enforcement. By then, we should have answers to questions about how traffic enforcement, about outcomes from traffic enforcement. And I think that is going to be really central to what we do. The last response we got from MCPD indicated that they saw writing tickets and citations as the best metric for success for traffic enforcement. And I think we had concluded that that is probably insufficient. So that's where we are on traffic enforcement at the moment. I do really hope that we have a very productive meeting with MCPD specifically in November, and that would let us sort of write a set of recommendations based on the work we've done. I also wanted to just drop in two other things from sort of discretionary policing. One, Jerry is about to start leading our effort on pedestrian stops, because that's also important. And Eric, I wanted to check in and see where we are on drug policy. You did some really good work there, and I want to make sure that that does not fall through the cracks in some way. So do you have a sort of update, or where are we on that? Do we need to push forward in, perhaps we need to push forward in the same way that we are with traffic, in terms of having a scheduling at some point, a meeting, public meeting with MCPD?
It's a great point. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Dalvin. Thank you, Robin. I don't have anything to report. There hasn't been any, I haven't been involved in any way in following up.
Okay, so can you remind me if we asked MCPD for a sort of formal explanation of what is going on with drug enforcement, specifically possession and enforcement for possession of drugs? Have we sent them a formal request, or is that still to come?
Well, we did ask for data. They came back with a rather hasty and incomplete sort of reply specifically regarding the marijuana actual arrests versus marijuana citations, which really wasn't in any way substantive. There was no other response regarding other kinds of arrests. There wasn't any of the breakdown, of the kind that is historically has been in the uniform crime reports regarding gender or race or ethnicity. So I mean, essentially, there hasn't been a response, but we have not been sort of
pushing, right?
Pushing.
So
Yeah,
it might make
okay.
sense. Yeah, it might make sense if I may, since we did ask once, they sent us a reply, for us to invite them same way we're doing for traffic stops, to answer some questions in a forum like this, right? That might make the most sense.
Alvin, if I may say,
Yes, go ahead, Eric, sorry.
What was sent to us was not actually a response at all to a request that we made. What had happened was I had identified the official state data, and Deputy Chief Patil questioned that data and said, no, that doesn't make sense, and let me see if I can get you anything better. So he came up with something that attempted to take issue with what the state was reporting, but there wasn't anything else. So there hasn't been any.
I guess I would
reporting coming forward in any reviewed, thoughtful way, other than sort of dealing with that one ad hoc question.
So I think, Dalvin, that the situation is that we've done some preparatory work here. We've gotten a sort of very preliminary response. I think the next thing to do, maybe Eric, and whether you think this is right, I think the next thing to do is actually to think hard about drug policy generally, because it applies also to traffic stops. I mean, we know that smelling marijuana is a fairly well-known part of pretext stops to do searches and so forth. So it would be useful, I think, for our subcommittee to put together a full information request. Then we get the information from them, we open a public comment thing, and then sometime at the beginning of next year, we can do a full hearing and resolve our questions.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, and it gives us time, right? Because we're about to have the traffic stop one, so this will give us time to do that
Yeah.
one probably in January or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Yep. That makes sense to me. Okay. Does anybody have anything else to add before we transition to the next thing on our agenda? Anybody?
We had
Yeah,
got,
Mr. Ricks.
I thought we had gotten some information from either the department or from the state's attorney that they are not prosecuting small amounts of drug things, and just whether a person has a joint or what have you, you know.
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, and anybody feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that is the state attorney's policy, but that apparently was not what was happening in Montgomery County. They were still stopping folks for marijuana. Am I correct in saying that? That's how I remember it over the summer
Yeah,
per the information you received?
Yes, the last data we have was that there were several thousand quote arrests. It's unclear what that actually means. It may just be, it may mean a civil citation, but as we discussed at an earlier meeting, civil citations still carry significant financial penalties and can, lead to problems further down the road. So the fact that these citations and tickets are being given out and appear to be something of a priority for MCPD, given the numbers, it started us off looking into this in more detail.
Yeah. So I mean, go ahead, Aaron.
I beg your pardon, just to say that it's not merely the consequences of getting the citation. The interaction between the citizen and the police department, in which there may be the fear that is generated. What's going to happen to me? What are the implications for my immigration status? And if I answer falsely, will I be arrested? Is force implicit if I don't answer? That interaction is a very fraught interaction when we're talking about marijuana or other drugs.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? Like at times it's and more often than not, it's much more than just the stop, right? It's what comes after that, right? It's if you say you get nervous and you just give a incorrect answer in the moment because you're nervous, right? Like that happens, right? We've seen it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen just in the news alone in the last couple of months, kids who encounter police and because they get nervous, they maybe give the wrong address or something like that, or just panic. And these are kids, right? And so and none of us, that fear doesn't go away because we're suddenly 30 or 35 or 40 years old, right? It just doesn't go away like that. So I think that's right. So Robin, I think those steps that you outline are perfect coming from your subcommittee. I think that gives us a chance to really tackle this at the beginning of January, because and the difference with this is that we have done a lot of the preparatory work. So this shouldn't be very difficult for us to do something at the beginning of January. Okay. So just keep us posted on that. Okay. Alicia, yes, go ahead.
If I could just stick a pin right here.
Go for it.
I was going back and forth with Carlos. We were trying to recall when the OLO report that I referred to earlier in the meeting went out. And I've had it for a couple months. A study on reassigning traffic enforcement from the Montgomery County Police Department to the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. That's the report I was referring to.
Yeah.
I've had that for a while. I was looking at it and reviewing it. So it's good to look at, and it's in line with where Robin's subcommittee. Some
it's
thoughts
a very good report.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that and they do a lot of really good work with what they're given. I think it's important to highlight that, right? To Chief Carmen's point, when he first started, he'd only been here a week, but he said a lot of these changes do take time, right? Like as you're kind of revamping some of these things. But the OLO, they've done, given the small team they have, they've done a lot of really, really good work. So kudos to them. And I'm excited for them to come on the 25th. Okay, Carlos, the next thing on our agenda, if I'm not mistaken, is the information request that we made to MCPD. Am I right?
Right.
Okay. If you can update everybody on where we are with that, because if I'm not mistaken, that request officially went out over 30 days ago. All right. It's been over 30 days. They got back in time. They got us the information that we asked for in time, all that stuff. Yes.
They sent it on September 24th, I believe.
Okay, perfect. Okay, did everybody receive a copy of this? Thumbs up if you did, thumbs down if you didn't. Yeah, okay.
I'm sure I just,
I would hope you guys did. I would hope you guys did. Okay, Carlos, would you mind pulling it up and sharing your screen, please, if that's not too much to ask?
Yeah, I can share.
Figure
it.
that'll be easier than us sitting here like a bunch of school-aged children reading it together.
I'd like you to read it out loud to me.
Like a bedtime story.
Yeah, I'm gonna curl up right here.
Okay, all right. So let's start. Okay. I'm gonna breeze through this, okay? I'm gonna breeze through this because we've had this for 2 weeks. Okay.
You know, Dalvin,
Yeah.
it's pretty long. I'm not sure that we really, I mean, we haven't had a response to this yet, right?
No, we have not.
So I think everybody, I don't see that, you
Well,
know,
MCPD provided responses in the blue below
Yeah.
the question.
So that's I was gonna read the responses. I was just gonna read the responses. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I was just going to read the responses. Okay, so question 1, can the police provide a more detailed explanation of how traffic enforcement is related to accident prevention? What analysis is used to determine where traffic enforcement is most necessary? Can MCPD provide an example of this kind of analysis? The Montgomery County Department of Police subscribes to data-driven traffic enforcement. Carlos, can you just slide your screen a little bit to the right? No, I got it, it's fine. It's not you, it's me. Location and times of enforcement are dependent on collision frequency, citizen complaints, and identified needs of the Montgomery County government. In July of 2021, the Central Traffic Unit was created as part of the department's commitment to the Vision Zero initiative. Members of the CTU are deployed to roadways in the county that meet the above criteria. These officers engage in high visibility traffic education and enforcement. Throughout their efforts, when officers identify roadway engineering issues, they will notify the State Highway Administration and the Montgomery County Department of Transportation to conduct road surveys and consider the implementation of suggested design, engineering changes, and modifications. Okay, and what we'll do is I'm going to read the answers.
I would,
Go ahead, Carlos.
sorry,
I'm sorry, Rob.
can I just point out that the question asked for them to describe the kind of analysis and to provide an example of this kind of analysis, and that answer does neither.
Okay. Carlos, can you do me a favor as we roll through these questions? Can you just in parentheses put like, just so what Robin just said, this answer does not satisfy the question we asked for, because this will form the basis of the response that we're going to send to MCPD. Okay, does anybody else have anything?
However, we have not really just, so that would be Robin's opinion, right?
Yeah, that's just my opinion, so it should be.
Yeah, so but just Carlos, write that and then put Robin in parentheses so I know that's Robin's opinion. Yeah. Okay. But yes, good point, Mr. Ricks. I just want to make sure that I capture what everybody's saying so that way it helps us guide whatever our response is going to be. Okay. So what we would have wanted to see here, right?
I agree with Robin. I don't think Robin's alone in that. He asked for a detailed analysis of where and why traffic enforcement is most necessary. And this is a very nice general statement of their general policy regarding how they go about traffic enforcement. But it's not answering, we don't have the example of the analysis. I just agree. I agree with Robin.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm the only one who agrees with him, but I
agree with Robin.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric. Sorry, you agree with Robin also. Yeah, I was going to say I agree with Robin also. I think that it's a very general summary of what like something that I could have gotten from a handbook, I think, right? Like it's not very specific to accident prevention either, because
it's not really responsive.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah,
it's evasive.
That's a good word to use. I think that covers it. Okay, all right, so okay, we're good there. Okay, does anybody else have anything to add about this specific answer? Okay, Nadia says agreed. This answer simply outlines what the CTU does. Yeah.
Yeah,
I do
Nadia
agree.
agrees. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add about this question before we go to the next one? So, okay. All right, let's go to the next one. Not hearing anything, I'll move to the next question. Are there data and analysis that shows that enforcement actions reduce accidents both in specific locations and across the county as a whole, and especially injury accidents? Can MCPD provide examples of this kind of analysis? The mission of the Central Traffic Unit is to reduce the number of collisions occurring throughout the county and increase the overall traffic safety for those who travel on our roadways, including motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. As was previously mentioned, the CTU, okay, it's the same thing as the one before. As previously mentioned, the CTU engages in high visibility education and enforcement on roadways that have the highest number of collisions and or complaints. The county has seen a decrease in the number of collisions in the weeks following a CTU deployment. In an effort to continue the downward trend in collision for these locations, the CTU has developed a rotational coverage plan where they return every 3 weeks to these roadways to monitor driving behavior and assess efforts and adjust if necessary. For the 3 summer months in the 2 years prior to the pandemic, the average number of collisions was 465. For 465. Where they deployed CTU in the 3 months post-pandemic, the number of collisions was 387, representing a 17% decrease. Due to the pandemic, the 3 summer months in 2020 saw less traffic on the roadways, and thus those numbers were not comparable. So before I open it up to the floor, I was going to say, I think as I was reading the first paragraph, I was like, man, this is where you would show this data showing the decrease, right? But to be fair to them, they do acknowledge that there were less cars on the road during the pandemic, so the numbers aren't necessarily comparable.
No,
so
they
that-
went, they have, I mean, they avoided 2020. It's a bit confusing, but they compared 2018 through 2019 with 2021.
Right.
So they, they were trying to avoid the pandemic year of 2020.
Oh,
which
okay,
is
got it. Yeah.
probably a good thing. This is better.
Yeah.
This is better work. There are a lot more questions to ask here, but it's certainly more responsive.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add about this question, about this answer? I do agree with Robin. I think it's better. I think we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and a lot of people still haven't really returned to the office. So there's still less cars on the road.
Yeah,
maybe not as much as there were in 2020, but still less cars, I imagine.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Ricks.
Yeah,
Oh, Mr.
did not they just implement a new traffic department in 2021 earlier on?
Yeah, that's this new CTU thing.
Yeah, so is this, I mean, to me, that was old information, but they have redone that department for it, so.
Yeah.
I think that Vernon, what they're doing here is showing the impact of enforcement using the new department compared to the same roadways 2 years ago when they didn't have that department. So they're trying to show the effect of the new department on accidents. So
Right,
that's
I understand
specifically.
that. Well, the new department hadn't been in place that long, I don't think.
Well, they say it has. They say it was there this summer.
Eric, I see you with your hand up, and then Carlos, I'm going to ask you a question that go ahead, Eric, sorry.
This answer, it gives county totals. It doesn't give us any sense of what fraction of these of how the deployments of the enforcement are in any way related. Was there an increase in the number of CTU deployments? How many CTU deployments? Are these CTU deployments some fraction of what patrol is doing? So we're not in any way given an analysis that helps us understand what's different. All that we're told is that there is a 17% decline in collisions. But are there more citations issued? Citations for what kinds of vehicular misconduct? this doesn't tell us anything about enforcement.
Chief Carmen, I see your hand up.
I would just offer to all of you that the change to the centralized traffic bureau took place immediately before my arrival. So I came, I think I was sworn in the 29th of June. And it had literally, I think, the week before happened. So it would be too early to provide statistics on the change, especially given the 3 month. We could compare a 3 month period to another 3 month period, but the pandemic obviously really prevents us from giving a good picture. So I would recommend to you, if you want to look long term or have statistics that provide you actual value, to wait that out to a 6 month or a year mark to see where the shift in central traffic has been.
So you're what date again were you sworn in, Assistant Chief? What date?
I can't believe I don't remember this, but I think it was June 29th. And I think the week before, or a couple of weeks before, maybe June 1st is when centralized traffic took into account, because it was literally like coming together when I first started.
So we're looking at 6 months would be December 1st, just in FYI, which is about a month and a half from now. So I'm going to put a pin in that, because I'm going to put a pin in that. Alicia, go ahead. Sorry, I saw your hand up, and then Sergeant Brewer.
Yeah, can you scroll back down a little bit, Carlos? Just to, I wanted to make sure, maybe I missed it, but I would really like to know where these CTU's efforts are concentrated. Where is, if there are any, if there's any data regarding that, because I think that a lot of minorities, I know for one, are interested in having less interaction with the police, being stopped, they feel as though that they're stopped more. And I think some of the data we've seen has shown that they are stopped more. So where are these stops? Where's the traffic enforcement concentrated? What specific areas? That would be interesting to know if they could produce that.
Yeah.
Not just, but where?
Chief Yamada's on the line. I know he has his hand up, but central traffic falls to him in the Field Services Bureau. So I'm sure that he can answer some of those questions.
Yep, I'll go to Chief Mark in a second. Sergeant Brewer had her hand up, and then I'll go to you, Chief Mark, if that's okay. Go ahead, Sergeant Brewer.
I'll go ahead and defer to Chief Yamada.
Okay. Go ahead, Chief.
The central traffic unit didn't start until July.
July 2021?
Correct.
So 6 months will put us in January. January 2022.
What are you waiting?
Correct. And our focus has been on the major arterial roadways, not in residential areas. So Connecticut Avenue, Veers Mill, University, East West, 355, New Hampshire Avenue, roads like that.
Okay. Okay. So none of the residential areas have been a focus so far. Okay.
No.
Okay. So Alicia, that may answer some of your points.
Yeah.
But I think that may answer some of that. Okay.
Some.
Ms. Branson, I see you're off mute, and I'm imagining you have your hands up, and then Robin, I'll go to you. Go ahead, Ms. Branson.
I'm sorry. I've been fighting this computer. I mean, this phone and the computer. I've been on since roughly the beginning, but I've had connectivity problems. So I just want folks to know that. Okay. So as to this particular response, what I don't understand is they acknowledge that there is a decrease in the number of cars on the road due to the pandemic, correct? Okay, so how much is the decrease? See, because if there's a 17% decrease of cars on the road and we have a 17% decrease in how many people got stopped, then we're still at even.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's a good point. It's a good point.
No, that's the only point.
Yeah.
This is, and maybe it's because I've been on this phone and fighting this computer, but I'm particularly like miffed about this because this is the ultimate obfuscation. This is the ultimate obfuscation. First, there is a mix of time periods and data that doesn't make sense. And secondly, there is not an attempt to really be responsive. So the first thing that's wrong with this is that they have not told us what the decrease in collisions, decrease in traffic. They have not explained to us. The purpose of this question is to ask, where is the enforcement occurring, right? Because as Alicia pointed out, there is, how do I have, okay, I'm gonna say this as carefully as I know how. I would assume that insurance carriers have some really good data about where accidents occur in this county. That is not the comparison we're seeing. And that is exactly the comparison we should see. We should be, because that would be objective. The people in the insurance industry, they don't care if it's on Georgia Avenue in Olney or Georgia Avenue in Silver Spring. Okay, but that is not the comparison we're seeing. What we're seeing is a narrow universe within a narrow universe that is completely and totally unhelpful. So that we ask, and I think Robin and I at one point did ask, whether they consulted the insurance industry. That's who knows where the accidents are in this county. Trust me. People have fender benders and they are not out here calling, the police if they can help it. So part of this inquiry has to be what external data, what external facts are they using to determine where they should be, excuse me, where they should be employing these stops. That's number one, because that external data is going to be based on actual occurrences and not assumptions of where things happen. Because assumptions of where things happen are self-fulfilling. Correct? Always has been. And so there's so much wrong with this answer that it is, as I said, it's almost purposely obfuscating.
Thank you for that, Ms. Branson. And Ms. Branson, I'm acknowledging that you are not absent, you see.
Yes, I because
I got you.
I
got you. Chief, actually, so before I go to you, Chief Carmen, I'm going to give you like every title: Sergeant Carmen, Dean Carmen. I'm going to give you all of them. But before I go to you, because I think Ms. Branson raises a really good point that I think we can ask Chief Yamada now that he's here, right? Because he's here with us. So I think we should take the opportunity to ask him that question now. And I think it's the point about whether MCPD has consulted insurance companies on accident claims, and has that helped guide where you guys have placed CTU units? Is that a tool that you guys use? Which Robin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's the question, right? That we're asking is.
Seems like the question. I'm not sure we asked it before, though.
No, we asked it in a meeting we had. We did ask it because I specifically raised this question because to me, this has got to be, there has to be an external, there has to be some external objective voice of where accidents occur in this county. There has to be. And the only external objective voice I can think of is insurance claims. If somebody else can think, now there might be others, but it can't be the self-fulfilling prophecy here.
Yeah. So I guess, and please let me know if I'm butchering this question, but Chief Mark, have you guys, so I think how did you guys determine what areas to place CTU units at? Is there data that you used before this? Like, how did you guys settle on what areas to have CTU stationed at, if I may ask?
So the data that we use is derived from our acres reports, and that's a data system that's held by Montgomery or Maryland State Police. It's not held by Montgomery County. And those accident or collision numbers are going to be, if you look historically, probably the same for the last dozen years. The same roadways. They haven't changed. They're the same that they have been 12 years ago or more. And they will probably continue to be that way. And that's where we deploy our central traffic unit, as I said, along our major arterial roadways, not in the residential neighborhood.
Okay, so thank you for that. I may come back to you with another question. Chief Carmen, go ahead. I'll go to you, and then Shabab, I'm going to go to you, and then I see Wade Holland has hand up. No? Okay. Carmen, and then Shabab.
So this was compiled in the process of me coming on board. But I would just offer to you, Ms. Branson, and to the commission, is that as a data scientist, if we're looking at the data objectively, we do not have an outside source that accurately represents how many vehicles are on the road during the pandemic. If that exists and the commission wants to provide that to us, we will absolutely take a look and compare that. I would say that, as Chief Yamada just mentioned, we use the system ACRES, which reports accidents. It's a Maryland State Police database. That is the biggest tool. If a accident report is given to the police, it is told in that system, and that's where we can pull from. This is why I want to wait for a year or at least 6 months to provide this information, because I don't think that it is a fair analysis, apples to apples, because of the pandemic. We can look at 2018 and 2019 in the summers, but that's 2 years off to see the difference in traffic collisions. We're going to want to look at 2021 for a decent period of time post-pandemic. And for the International Institute for Highway Safety, they don't, to my knowledge, release information about specific counties. They only release information about make and models of certain vehicles. So we can try to search there. We can try to search within Vision Zero. But if we're going to use and create an accurate report to you, which is, I think, what everybody wants, then we have to use the internal data that we have, because we would then be comparing apples to oranges if we're comparing our data against AAA's data or to some insurance claim.
And I will say, Jen made a good point about just that some people don't report accidents too, right? Like that's also, and especially if, like, say you have, like, say there's stuff going on with your status or something like that, you may not report it.
Especially if you're uninsured.
Especially if you're uninsured, right? So I think that's a genuine fear. Chief Mark, I'm going to come back to you real quick. Shabab just had her hand up for a while, so I want to go to her. But before I do that, I want to ask the commissioners and please vote in the A or the nay in the chat. If you guys are okay, Wade Holland works on Vision Zero for the county, and he may have some insight for us, but we don't typically allow outsiders to speak. So I want to raise that point to a vote before we allowed Mr. Holland to speak. So I'm asking for permission to allow Wade Holland to speak during this meeting. Please respond in the A or the nay in the chat. And then if the A's have it, we'll allow Wade to speak. I should probably vote too, right? All right.
Does Mr. Holland represent an organization? I didn't recall sort of in the introductions going back to the beginning of the meeting.
Sorry about that. Carlos, he represents the Vision Zero initiative, right, for the county? Am I correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
I vote aye.
Okay. Yeah, I think the ayes have it.
Yeah, the ayes have it. Mr. Holland, please, first, welcome. Thank you for joining us today, and your presence at our meeting couldn't be more timely, I guess. But if you could provide some context for us, that would be great. And then Shabab, I will go to you.
All right, well, thank you for allowing me to chime into this. 'Cause I will say, I'm Wade Holland, the Division Zero coordinator for Montgomery County. Prior to working in the Division Zero program, actually was a data analyst assigned to our pedestrian safety initiative. So live and breathe this kind of data. So as Chief Yamada mentioned, the primary source that we use for not only for our engineering efforts and education efforts, but also for the enforcement efforts is the collision data collected by police. When we first started the pedestrian safety initiative in 2007, 2008, my predecessors in county stat had done an analysis of different data sources. So including the crash data collected by police, but also the EMS data collected by fire and rescue. What they found was largely overlapped, and then when they ran the two different data sets, it showed kind of the same hotspots that we use for our, for our efforts. So because the police records are so much more detailed in terms of all the pre-crash events as well as the crash events and post-crash events, versus the EMS data is kind of more about the, we got there, here's the clock that ran, that's kind of the information you have. So that's what we really largely rely on the collision data collected by police. There are some other data sources as well we get from the State Highway Administration about traffic. So to kind of clarify some questions you had about the traffic data, we do not have real-time traffic data on a lot of roads. The only roads that have real-time traffic counters on them are the interstates. So there's a couple on I-495 and I-270. But in terms of like the overall traffic on the local network, we don't have 2020 data yet. So that's why you kind of see the numbers in terms of decreases on the overall crashes. So we have that data cleared already. We don't have data yet on all the lower traffic. There's some third-party sources that have some data, but that can be hit and miss depending on the vendors. So hopefully that helps. And again, thanks for letting me chime in.
No, and thank you, Wade. Shabab, and then I'm going to go to Robin, and then I'll go to Chief Mark. Okay, Shabab, go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to be mindful that I know we're going to be coming up on time soon, and there's a big chunk of the information request we got, the response we got about pretextual stops. So I just wanted to flag that there's a section about guns being seized during traffic stops, and that does a really good job of looking at how many are being seized during traffic stops. And it seems like this is something that MCPD is tracking quite regularly. What's frustrating—
Can you scroll down to that, Carlos?
What's frustrating is that it seems like there are some pieces of data that are being consistently collected as a result of traffic stops, such as, was a gun seized? What is not being collected is the other questions around warrants being issued during these traffic stops, drugs for sale being seized. Those pieces are not being collected, and there was no information provided disaggregated by that. So, I mean, a skeptic might say, and I might call myself a skeptic, right? If we're collecting data and the data happens to show law enforcement activity in a positive light, is that the only data being reported out? And is data showing that any data that might suggest that traffic enforcement is not the right way to be going about these kinds of ways of making our community safer, is that the data being hidden? So with no other context, if this is the only information being given to me, here is a very detailed data point showing that we're keeping the community safe, and similar information that you're asking for, we just don't happen to collect. That's what I'm getting looking at this report. So while I'm pleased to see that there are some activities happening that are keeping the community safe, I still have questions about other activities, and it's frustrating that even though we've been asking this over and over and over again, the only specific thing we're getting that we're asking for is the thing that happens to show the department in a positive light, and that's really frustrating to me.
I think that's a valid point, right? Because I think if I will say, and Chief Carmen, you're new-ish, right? Like you've only been here a couple months, but I will say, I think for our commission, one of the, I think this is a fair statement. I think one of the biggest frustrations is the lack of data, right? Whenever we ask, and that's just a general statement. That's not to like point fingers or anything like that. But I mean, we've been a commission now for a year and 3 months, just about, and it has been a fairly persistent issue, right? When it comes to just being able to access data, and then we see that there is actually some really good data about certain things. So I get the frustration, I think. Robin, I think you had your hand up, and then I'll go to Chief Carmen and
Yeah,
Chief
I have
Mark.
two things. I would say that these, so far as the firearms data is concerned, this is useful information. It needs to be put in context. That number 46 seizures was the result of, based on previous years, more than 50,000 traffic stops. So 1 in 1,000 traffic stops approximately is resulting in a firearms arrest, and we don't know, the results of those arrests. So I wanted to put it in context. More generally, I'd like to understand, there was a plan to put all traffic enforcement under CTU. CTU, last time we heard from MCPD, accounted for about 15% of traffic stops. So 85% are beat officers and enforcements from the district, for which there is apparently no coordination. There was a strategy, I believe, to move all traffic enforcement into the CTU, so that we could have a unified view of what traffic enforcement should be. And so my question is, what's happened to that plan? I understand CTU is in charge of managing traffic stops for major arterial roads. Are we still in process? Is there still a plan to have CTU become the lead for all traffic stops in Montgomery County, or is that no longer the case?
That's a really good question. Carlos, just make sure you capture that, just because I think that's a question that we would ask in our response to MCPD. Because I remember that, Robin, and that was something that I had written down as something that I was like, when are they going to implement that? Alicia, sorry, Chief Carmen, then Chief Mark, then Sergeant Brewer, then Alicia, in that order. Those are the next 4. And then I don't see anybody else. Oh, and then Susan has her hand up. So Susan, you will go 5th. All right, Chief Carmen, go ahead.
So I will let Chief Yamada go because he's the subject matter expert. And then if I need to add anything, I will.
Great, thank you. Chief Yamada, go ahead.
So just to go back to reiterate, we do not reach out to insurance companies regarding the collisions, and it's for a multitude of reasons, some of which have already been discussed, so I won't belabor the point. The other thing is, I'm not sure who told the PAC that all traffic enforcement was going to fall under Central Motors. That was never the plan as it was explained to me and as I took over. There's a coordinated effort still between the districts, as I said, Central Motors is on Imperial Road.
Breaking up a bit.
Still
we lost you.
Troll to a multitude of complaints generated. Hello.
Should we come back to Chief Yamada in a bit?
Yeah, I think so, because I didn't hear.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Oh, we can hear you better now.
Can anybody hear me?
Nope, guess we cannot.
Jen raised a really good point. If everyone would cut off their camera if you're not speaking, except for Dalvin and the chair and the vice chair and the person speaking, then that helps with bandwidth. That helps, tends to help.
So that's a good point, Alicia. Thank you for that, and thank you, Jen, for bringing that up. Let's come back to Chief Mark, because I think his phone was just cutting out. You guys can hear me just fine, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yes.
okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay. So Alicia, I'm going to go to you, and then I'm going to come back to Sergeant Brewer. So go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah, I no longer have a comment. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Sergeant Brewer, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I clicked everything off.
No problem.
I might have been, some of my comments might have stepped on Chief Yamada's too. So some of what he said, I might be reiterating, but obviously he went in and out. I just don't think it's really possible to say that they're going to do complete, and I don't think that's what anybody's getting at, but just the central traffic unit couldn't possibly just be the only people doing traffic stops. It just asked to consider any police officer who observes, let's say, somebody run a red light. Obviously, we're not going to sit there and let that happen. And I know that's not what people were talking about, but there's just really no conceptual way to really just say that central traffic is going to do only that. I think some of what Chief Yamada was saying, and I hope I'm not overstepping, is if there's specific complaints and stuff, they're going to be mobilized as groups and stuff based on, again, like is questioned here in this request, where the data basically saturation and stuff like that. I think that's their mission, but not to completely take over as the main or sole people doing traffic stops within the department.
And Carlos, I'm back. I don't know if you can hear me now, but I don't know where I cut out. I just eliminated my video because the connection obviously is poor.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you now. Thank you, Sergeant Brewer. I'm going to go to Chief Yamada now. Then I'm going to go to Susan, then Cherie, and then Chief Carmen, so you can put a bow on everything that we've heard. So go ahead, Chief Yamada.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I cut out, but the traffic enforcement and education doesn't fall solely on central traffic. It also has, you have district traffic complaint officers, you have community services officers, and you have our contingency of patrol officers in every district who share the burden of traffic education, pedestrian education, and enforcement.
Okay. So that's also helpful context, because now it seems like we were given, to that point, because I don't think 6 or 7 of us made that up. So it seems like somebody may have told us that and they may have misspoken. I'm going to go with that. Ms. Branson, go ahead. And then Susan, I will go to you. And then Chief Carmen, I'll go to you. Go ahead, Ms. Branson.
Hi, yeah, okay, so just to be clear, I don't think anyone told us that that the traffic enforcement or traffic division would be doing all the enforcement, right? That was not what was said. What was said was that the traffic division does in fact have its own policy priorities, and that those policy priorities for traffic enforcement would then be handed out. That was the question that we asked, whether the individual districts got to set their own policy priorities in traffic enforcement, right? So to me, that question is still on the table, whether the division that calls itself the traffic division, whatever the name is, whether the policy priorities of that division are then followed by the others. The answer we got before was no. And so the question becomes, why not? And then the question becomes, okay, well, if there is some rationale that the traffic division is using to come up with this policy priorities, how are others allowed to create their own policy priorities? That's what we were talking about. We weren't talking about the people in traffic division running around arresting everybody at a stoplight. So anyway, just wanted to make that really clear.
Okay, so if I could try to answer that question for you. The 6 district stations each have their own individual priorities. As a district commander, you might receive a number of complaints from your communities that could vary. It could be traffic around school zones. It could be traffic in residential areas. It could be speed bump requests, speed camera requests, red light camera requests. It varies district to district. So that's where the priorities might come into a difference. That's where you might run into that difference. It's not
No,
that.
sir, I understand that. That is not the question. I do
Okay.
understand the current
Yeah.
current implementation plan.
So the central.
That's not what I'm asking. What
Okay.
we had asked before and what we were told before is whether the traffic division, whatever nomenclature you want to use, whether their policy priorities would become the policy priorities of the others. That's what we were asked. And, that's what we asked, and that was the response we saw. We sought.
Okay, so if you can let me answer you, so each district station still continues to function under their own priorities. They have a different set of priorities. Central traffic focuses on the major arterials, and in coordination to effectively put into place the Vision Zero, we've chosen 5 violations that we focus on: distracted driving, impaired driving, aggressive speeding. There are the passenger restraint, distracted driving. Those are the 5 that we focus on, and we focus on the 5 the major arterial roadways throughout the county. Now, those priorities could differ from district to district, but Central Motors, which only started in July, that's their focus. Okay, and it's not just enforcement. The priority that I set into place when I got there was on education. Education was the number 1, not enforcement.
No, I understand. We're saying the same thing, sir. You know, my question, our question initially was, is there one common set of priorities that everyone uses? And is that set of priorities dictated by the traffic unit? Okay. The answer to that question at the time was no. And so then we were told that things would change. And so the question now is, have things changed? And the answer is still no. I'm just trying to cut through to it. I mean, this is bottom line. That there has been no change. The individual stations can still set their own priorities. That's really, you know, whatever role this overarching, you know, Vision Zero thing may play seems to be minuscule. if in fact the individual stations can still set their own enforcement priorities.
Okay, so Susan, you had your hand up. I'm going to go to you, and then I'll come back to Chief Yamada, and then actually that will be where we put a pin on this conversation because we only have 7 minutes left. Go ahead, Susan.
Chief Yamada really clarified what I wanted to say, because a lot of this was discussed during the operating budget for the police department last spring, and I can link my packet if you wanted to read that, because it has a lot of information on what centralized traffic was going to do. And they were basing a lot of this on Vision Zero's racial equity task force that wanted them to prioritize those major safety infractions, enforcing those, which is exactly what CTU is doing now, and to not focus on minor violations. And when departments around the nation have done that, they have seen an increase in road safety and a reduction in the racial inequities in traffic stops.
Susan, can I just point out one thing? That's entirely understandable, but you said departments around the nation. What we have here is a central traffic unit, not the department. 85% or 80% of the traffic stops are not aligned with these goals, so far as we know.
And I'll defer to Chief Yamada because he's the subject matter expert on this, but what you're talking about is actually 2 very different types of traffic functions.
Exactly.
One is being responsive to the community concerns, and the other one is going by data-based information to try to reduce collisions, pedestrian injuries, and driver
industries. So they're just two very different functions.
We agree.
I think the county executive had that function, had that as a program when he was running for office.
It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, and Ms. Branson raised the point in the chat, which I think it's important, and I think it ties in why a lot of us why we're having some of this consternation. The racial inequity persists due to the variation in traffic enforcement policies between the various departments, right? Like it seems like there's a lack of consistency across the board.
That was my point, Dalvin.
Yeah,
but I was agreeing with Sharon.
Sorry, Alicia. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point, and I think part of our charge is going to be to work with MCPD to come to a point where there isn't this lack of cohesion across the board when it comes to policies, right? Because I think that's what's leading to that's leading to a lot of the inequities that we're seeing. Thank you, Carlos. Sorry, I should have told you to stop sharing long ago. Sorry about that. Okay, Ms. Branson, did you have something to add, or is your hand just, you forgot to put your hand down? I'm going to assume she forgot to put her hand down.
I didn't forget to put my hand down.
Okay, sorry.
I'm just really slow on the unmute.
No worries,
today.
no worries.
Yes, exactly what Alicia put in the chat. This is my concern about racial inequities. And that is what's clear. As long as things remain the same, nothing changes, right? I mean, that's really, and so, I guess if what is really clear to me is that, and I hate to say broad generalized things, but I think I have to right now. And that is that no matter what we suggest, there is a justification by the police to retain the status quo. And that is beyond frustrating, but more than that, it is completely and totally disrespectful for what our role is. And I just have to say that because I think I think the community needs to know and understand that. I really think this needs to be said plainly in a public forum, because otherwise, we're now being asked to wait for 6 more months for some additional data. What? That's just delaying. And I'm sorry, but right now, delay, is really about denial. It's about denial of responsiveness, denial of accountability. And I'm kind of just like done with that. So maybe I'm an outlier. Maybe I'm a crazy old lady, but this is really, we have had the same conversation about traffic data and assorted things for, I think, maybe the last 4 meetings. Yep. I don't know how often, this horse is dead. We can keep beating it. It's not going to get back up. So at some point, we got to realize this horse is dead and we have to do something else. What else there is up to us. I promise I won't say anything else tonight unless somebody calls my name.
No, and I will say thank you for saying that, Ms. Branson, because I do think that I will say I don't think you're an outlier. I think that we have been having, and I'll go back even further, and as we begin to wrap, because we're going to have to finish going through this document together so we can craft an actual response, right? But we've been having the traffic stop conversation for longer than the last 4 meetings. We've been having the traffic conversation since, I want to say, March of 2021, right? Like March, April, around there, it feels about right. And it's a conversation that I think conceptualizes some of the issues that we have ahead of us, right? Because whereas with the drug stuff, like we did a lot of this work ahead of time, right? So like we said earlier, in January, it should be pretty straightforward to kind of get to where we're going to get to. But a lot of the same issues that are rearing their head now in the traffic stop, I have a feeling are going to rear their head come January. And we need to fix a lot of this stuff now to make our work easier going forward. Otherwise, we're going to be spinning our wheels come January, right? And that's going to be through no fault of our own. And you know, and Chief Yamada's here, Chief Carmen, Sergeant Brewer, who, you know, if you guys tuned into the forum that Nadia and I spoke at, the one thing that I did say is that I have been pleasantly surprised, and this is why I don't go into any of these things with assumptions, right? But I had been pleasantly surprised by your willingness to be a part of these conversations, right? Because again, like, not a lot of law enforcement would be willing to be a part of this conversation, right? But being a part of the conversation is fine, but we need you guys to do the work with us, right? Like, we need you to do the work with us so these things can't continue to happen. And there's a lot of changes being asked of MCPD, both now and coming out of the General Assembly when they return in January. And we want to work with you to make your jobs easier. And one of the things that need to happen in order for that to do is the data that we ask for has to be right. And we need to do something tangible with it, right? Because, to quote Ms. Branson, to do the same thing over and over again, that's insanity, right? And expect a different result, that's insanity. That's insanity. And we're not, and none of us are insane. None of us are insane. It is 8:01. It is 8:01. I said we would get out early. We did not get out early today. But next steps are going to be, expect an email from Nadia and I tomorrow, because we do need to craft a response to MCPD about of this to the responses that they gave. Yeah, expect that email tomorrow, because I think a lot came out of this meeting that we need to move some stuff in place in order to make sure we're as effective as we can be. Okay. Thank you guys for all your work today, all your work tonight. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.